Welcome to today's study session. Oh, hi, Marita. Nice you could make it. That's nice. Yeah, okay, it's a drive-by. Folks, just so that you understand the intended purpose of today's meeting, it's actually a study session, not one of the many community input meetings that we intend to have in the process of this general plan update. But being it's a study session with a board and that being a public meeting, we thought we would accommodate the room for everyone who wanted to attend this. So what the purpose of today's study session is for the board to give input to our general plan coordinator and contract. You okay over there? So I'll read this discussion portion, so maybe that will help you understand where we're going today. The county's entered into Phase 3, Issues, Opportunities, and Vision of the General Plan Update. During this phase, the General Plan team works with the Community Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors to identify key issues and opportunities and develop an overall vision for the future of Calaveras County. The original work plan proposed conducting a visioning session with the Board of Supervisors after the next round of community meetings. But in order to expedite the update process, the CDA has requested the contractor hold initial visioning session with the Board of Supervisors to provide a better framework for discussion with the public during the visioning process. So what we're going to attempt to do today is have a presentation from the Mintier and Associates, followed by the items for discussion with the Board of Supervisors presented by the Community Development Agency. So this is an interaction between our agency, the General Plan Update contractor, and the board. And once we've done with that, then I will ask if there are any questions about what we have discussed. So it's not to the exclusion of you folks, but this is not the traditional community input meeting. So I hope I've made that more or less understood. This is a meeting that the board needs to have to get their visioning done that will precede the actual community meetings, but you're certainly not excluded, and you'll certainly have an opportunity to make comments. So with that, I will turn this over to the CDA.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Stephanie Moreno, Director of Community Development. This, as you stated previously, is a visioning session with the Board of Supervisors to give staff and the contractor and the general plan some direction as we go forth into the community to do our general plan update. The general plan team essentially is those people sitting at the table here, Larry Mintier and Rick Keller from Mintier and Associates, who will be making the initial presentation. Lynn O'Connor is our general plan coordinator, Christine Poe is our administrative director, and Nathan Atherstone is from Public Works. We also have Janice Elliott, Deputy County Counsel, in the audience. I don't know if Bob Selman, our planning director, has made it yet. I gave him directions not to show up till he ate lunch, so hopefully he's doing that. We're going to do the first presentation. It'll take 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will launch into a discussion of the issues that we've heard comments about either from the community or from the board themselves. Some of them are policy issues that you've struggled with over the last year and a half that I've been here. Some will seem very fresh, maybe right off the press from this morning. So hopefully we will be able to get some discussion going and maybe some consensus on a few issues. We hope to take this feedback after you give it and after the public has commented on it today, back into the communities so that we can have a more structured framework for dealing with the general plan update in the community meetings, get them to be very specific in the types of goals and policies and implementation measures that they would like to see in the general plan update as they relate to the things that we've heard from you. We're hoping this will expedite the general plan update and get it back to the board sooner for final adoption. So I don't know if you have any questions about the process right now. Then I'll allow Larry Mintier to proceed with the next portion.
Thank you, Stephanie. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Larry Mintier, Mintier and Associates, and I'm here with Rick Keller, my associates, who's the project manager for this general plan update. We've prepared a PowerPoint that should, again, take no more than 10 to 15 minutes to go through. It's part refresher course on the overall structure of the general plan update program. We want to tell you what's been accomplished in phases 1 and 2. And we're just beginning phase 3, so we want to talk to you a little bit about the steps and the various activities that are involved in phase 3. I'll turn it over to Rick Keller to do a summary of the results of the community plan workshops that we held in May and June, and we'll talk about next steps, and then we'll come back to a more general discussion for the board relative to some key issues that'll serve as a setup for the next round of community workshops. Again, here's the full general plan update program. It's laid out in 9 phases: program initiation and baseline report. This is these are the first 2 phases that the board authorized, and we're essentially complete with both of these phases. I'll talk about both these phases just a little more detail in just a second. And here's the third phase, which we're really launching today with this meeting with the board. Following phase 3, we'll move into phase 4, discussion of alternatives, and based on the direction provided by the board, there we'll be developing the goals and policies, and then preparing the environmental impact report, and then moving into a more formal public review phase. Here's the overall schedule. Now, it's impossible to read, particularly from the audience, but this work program is, again, broken into these 9 phases you see laid out here in this timeline. The approximate length of the overall update is 2 years, plus or minus, and we hope we will work to get it done as rapidly as possible. But that's the rough outline for the general plan update program. And you see that second bar, the gray bar, is the baseline report. And again, we're getting very close to having that document completed, ready for public review. Going back to phase 1, which we started back in April, at that point we made through discussions with the board and staff, made some determinations about the overall format for the general plan, collected documents to begin the second phase of the program. We also confirmed the GIS information from the county and settled on some boundaries and firmed up the base maps, which was all foundational for the rest of the general plan update program. We also worked with the county to launch a general plan update website, which we're continuing to use. And you'll recall that we met with you on April 24th in a kickoff meeting. It was a joint session of the Planning Commission and the board. And then, of course, the major activity in this first phase was this round of 7 community workshops that we conducted between May and June. The second phase is the preparation of a baseline report. This document, which will be hundreds of pages long, is basically a summary of existing conditions and trends in the county. It's not a policy document. It may describe existing policy, but in itself it does not advance policy for the county. We've taken all the topics that we'll be addressing as part of this general plan update and develop, again, baseline information relative to population demographics, land use, scenic and community character, transportation and circulation, and so forth. You'll see that for the housing element portion of this general plan, we are relying right now on existing information because we're sort of out of phase for update of the housing element. Within a couple years, the county will have to initiate an update of its existing housing element, but that's not required at this point, and so we're not including that information, any new information relative to housing, or at least for the housing element, in the general plan. That is not to say that the general plan will not address housing. We will be addressing housing. We're going to be taking a very long view of of housing, and of course, being that that's one of the most important land uses we're going to be dealing with. But the housing element is a shorter term document. It has about a 5-year perspective. And again, you already have a housing element in place, and we're obliged to ensure that all the new policies in the plan are consistent with the existing plan, or I mean the existing housing element or the new housing element. Now we're moving into phase 3, as I said, with this kickoff meeting today with the board. We will be preparing, based on your direction today, a key summary of key issues and opportunities. We will be drawing on the background report and the community workshops, but we'll be adding input from the board to this report. We'll be taking this report on the road to a series of 6 community workshops. And out of that workshop, we will be preparing not only a summary of the comments as we've done with the first round of community workshops, but we'll be preparing a draft vision statement that'll be the first policy statement that the board will get to consider in this general plan update process. We'll be coming to the board with the results of that workshop, that round of workshops, and the vision statement for confirmation and subsequent direction. Here are the activities again in phase 3, this is the list of community workshops, or tentatively the locations and the approximate time frame for the 6 community workshops. In November, we're planning to go to San Andreas, District 2, and Valley Springs, and in December, go to Murphy's, Copperopolis, and Arnold. Again, the staff is working on scheduling those community workshops as we speak, and presumably within the next couple of weeks we'll have those dates and locations pretty well nailed down. With that, I will turn it over to Rick Keller, who's going to give you a quick summary of what we heard in the first round of community workshops. Rick?
Thank you, Larry. This slide just shows some photos from the workshops we conducted, and again, there were 7 in this first round that ran from the start of May in San Andreas through June 23rd in Rancho Calaveras. And we had 2 exercises that we conducted with the workshops. We had initial presentation about the general plan update process, and really the meat of the workshops was getting as much community input as possible. And the first exercise was to have the participants focus on community issues, and we had 2 questions that were related to that, and they were very simple questions. The first was identify your community's most important assets and identify your community's biggest problems. And we divided the workshops into a number of separate tables, depending on how many people attended the workshop, but usually we had anywhere from 6 to 10 people per table, and each of the tables would really brainstorm about these questions and try to list as many things as possible. And then we had them vote as a group to determine the top 3 in each of those. And exercise 2 that you can see here is covering county-wide issues. And we had the same 2 questions focused toward county-wide issues. Identify the county's most important assets and the county's biggest problems. And this is a summary of the overall results of the workshops. There will be a document that we produce that provides a summary of this, and we have a draft of that right now, where we've gone through each of the tables, inputs, in each of the workshops, and compiled that. And this summarizes what we're hearing overall. Of course, the document that we'll present will have the details in terms of what each of the communities said. But these are the big picture things that we're seeing as a result from the workshops. And the top 3 community assets, there are 4 listed there, is tied for 3rd, really, in terms of the overall frequency of how these things were mentioned. But the top 3 are recreation, rural atmosphere, and open space and history as a tie for third. And for some of the examples that we can look at for recreation, folks are talking about parks, lakes, forest resources, in addition to golf courses, wineries, ranches. The rural atmosphere, that was something that came through in all the workshops, and people were talking about a strong sense of community, and the sense of open space and being surrounded by forests or ranches, the lack of corporate and chain businesses that all contributed to the rural atmosphere that people liked. And in terms of open space, again, the forested areas, state and BLM land, U.S. Forest Service land, lack of light pollution and noise pollution also contributed to the sense of open space and just the overall natural beauty of the Sierra foothills. In terms of history, things that people focused on are the logging history, the mining history, in addition to Native American culture and those resources in the county. And then the top three community problems. And again, people were identifying these for each of their communities, however they define those. And so the results of these vary by community, but these are the things that we're seeing in common among the communities. And number one on the list there, roads and traffic. Second, economic development. And third, public safety. For roads and traffic, some of the issues that are related to that, deteriorating air quality, poor road quality and maintenance, lack of public transportation, too much traffic on main roads, lack of pedestrian and bicycle facilities. In terms of economic development, some things that people mentioned were not enough centralized shopping or retail, need for downtowns and town centers with grocery stores and post offices and other conveniences, that there's not enough support for farmers and ranchers, that just the overall need for jobs and more cottage industry development, homegrown industry within Calaveras County. And in terms of public safety, the concerns there are drug, alcohol, gang, and crime problems in general, poor cell phone reception, concerns with law enforcement response times, and the drain on police, fire, emergency services from new development, along with the insufficient jail resources. Then we have a list here of what people were saying from the workshops in terms of county-wide assets and county-wide problems. And a number of these overlap with the topics that we looked at in terms of the community assets and community problems. But again, we have three listed under assets here with a tie for third, with natural resources and rural open space qualities of the county being one of the top assets, along with tourism and recreation and local history. And with the three biggest problems identified are planning and leadership, and really relating to county leadership and the land use planning issues, and exacerbated recently with just the larger population growth and the pressures that's brought. Roads and traffic is another hot topic, both locally and the county-wide issue, and along with economic development again. And to go over our next steps again in terms of where we are in the process and where we're going, the public review draft baseline report is due to be released in several weeks, and then that will, once that's finalized, that wraps up phase 2 of the project. And phase 3, which we're kicking off now, we have the kickoff meeting today. We have the second round of community workshops. They're tentatively scheduled November to December. Some of those might go to January, depending on scheduling of those meetings in the communities. We'll be doing the issues and opportunities summary based on baseline report information, based on what we're hearing from the workshops, and based on what we're hearing today from this workshop. And the final portion of phase 3 is to draft a vision statement for the general plan.
So that concludes our presentation. If you have any questions about the process or the findings for the first round of community workshops, I'd be happy to try to answer your questions. And before we move on to the rest of the meeting, which will focus on board discussion about key issues as it's sort of a setup for the next round of community workshops.
So you have a more or less a list of topics that you want us to
Yes, we do. These are the issues that we've identified were things that we've heard either from the board, from staff, or from members of the public during the processing of applications or other public hearings through the course of the last year. Transportation circulation, road maintenance, water, wastewater, land use designations, pedestrian bikeways, habitat easements, open space preservation, transfer of development rights, smart growth, affordable housing, historic preservation, design review, maximum lot coverage, law enforcement jail, fire safety, and child care. What I thought I would do is go through each one of those issues very quickly to see if the board has any comments about them that we can memorialize here and put back into our summary of today. Some of the issues may be important to you, some may not be as important to you, but we'd like some input on all of them from you. And again, some may take more time than others. And I don't know if there's anything that we've missed on the list that you'd like to add as well, that you spot right away, or we can do that at the end of the discussion.
No, I'm really not clear what we're supposed to be doing. Are we supposed to be doing a vision and taking it out to the community? Are we supposed to be looking at key issues? I meant, truthfully, I am not clear on the agenda. I heard what Bill said, and it's not matching what I think we're supposed to be doing.
Okay. What we'd like you to do is for the board to review these issues with staff, the general plan update team, give us your thoughts about things that we should be looking at, things that you think are working and should not be touched, things that need additional work, so that we can start thinking about those things and maybe structure our comments when we go back out to the community. For example, road maintenance. It's a hot button topic. It occurs to us that you are leaning towards PRDs for the use or continued road maintenance issues. That seems to be where the board's headed. For new development projects, we don't really know where you're headed for other parts of the county, or if that's just what you're doing now, or if that's what you want to make a policy. So we thought we could get some feedback from you, some formal feedback from you on where you think we should be headed with these issues, or maybe you think PRDs aren't working, we need to look at something else, so that when we go back out to the community, we can tailor and streamline some of the feedback. There is no point going to the community and saying, how do you want to fund road maintenance if we already know the board wants to do all of their road maintenance a certain way, and give them the impression that that is something that there is no input on. So it's just to say, the board's looking at this is what they think, give us some feedback. It gives us a better opportunity to interact and have dialogue with them than just walk in the door and say, what do you think about road maintenance? And again, it's trying to narrow the focus of the issues, get some feedback from you, take it back to the community, but to streamline the update process so that we're not just in a free-for-all. If that, I don't know if that clarifies.
Fine. I think that each of these, I'm assuming that these are listed up there in no specific priority because we're going to have differences of opinion there. So that's the way I'm going to approach
There's no
this.
priority on these, no.
Okay. And you mentioned the PRDs, and for those folks that may not have been aware, not too long ago we had a study session with regard to how many private roads and private subdivisions that we have in Calaveras County, and how those some of those subdivisions have roads that are nearly impassable and no way to maintain them and no economic structure to pay for that maintenance. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we agreed that the policy of no longer accepting new roadways into the county system is something that we should move away from. We went there at one time, and what we've wound up with is miles upon miles upon miles of roads that are nearly impassable, be it all that they are private, but there is no funding to maintain them. So the thing to do is to try to move away from that, and the board at that point had consensus for these private subdivisions of private roadways that exist, and there are several options there, one of them being CSAs or CSDs, another being the permanent road divisions, the PRDs, and that seems to be, at that time at least, what this board, the direction they thought they should go, these permanent road divisions, wherein the roads would be built to county standards, and they would be maintained to county standards, and it would be a condition of approval of a project to provide a guaranteed funding for that with the proviso, or at least the possibility of taking those roads into the county road system and adjusting the revenue source to take care of them. So we didn't wind up with miles and miles or hundreds of miles of private roads that did not meet county standards and so on and so forth. So as far as that, and again, please, my board, correct me if I'm wrong, we went that direction, so I believe that the update of this general plan should include those instructions that we are not going to, at this point, allow land divisions that drop the blade on a caterpillar and make a road and call it a road. We need to plan for the future. Those things will tie into a circulation system so that you don't have, again, these private developments when they occur that lead to dead-end roads or roads that are just doomed to being impassable or not maintained. It was important to us to have people come to the board and request help, important enough to us to have a study session about it. Therefore, it's obviously important enough to make this quite clear in the general plan.
And is it my understanding that from now on then the county will be accepting all offers of dedication into the county maintained system? Do we go to that next?
Not necessarily. We'll make those decisions, but I believe we want to move away from the policy of accept no more roads into the county maintained system.
Okay,
Where it's appropriate, we should, but even if the county does not do that, I believe we agreed that there should be a mechanism in place for the development or developer to maintain those roads to county standards and offer them for dedication so that at any time we can accept them if we choose to. Is that correct? Is that pretty close? Yes. Okay.
Okay, so that's important for us to know, that we don't want to, that we're not going to start accepting everything. We just want the offers there, but everything to be in PRDs.
Right. We will be accepting some. I mean, that's the intent, and we want them to build to the standard. We may accept them at any time in the future when it becomes important to the circulation of traffic in the county.
Now, some of these things seem more tied into the zoning and the supporting implementation measures, but it's important for us to know this in order to craft the proper policies and goals in the update. One of the issues relative to transportation and circulation is a lot of developers do not want to provide a secondary access out of a project, or they only want to provide emergency access rather than full circulation. I'd like some feedback from the board if they want us to continue requiring full circulation, if emergency access is sufficient, if there's cases where we may need to do or look at eminent domain in order to provide circulation. I know that's a hot button topic as well. If I could get some feedback from the board on those type of issues as well as we're going through the county. Do we want to try to fix some of the circulation issues that we have as new development comes in? Do you want to leave it be?
Well, is there not now some criteria with regard to the length of roadway going into, I mean, if you have a development with, call it a development with 5 parcels, and roadway, as opposed to a development that has 100 parcels with 2 miles of roadway. I think there's...
I'll give you an example of what I'm looking for. We have a project that just recently came in. They want to create 5-acre lots, and originally there had been an easement across the property to connect to another subdivision. but the other subdivision did not honor that easement at one point. So now we have a subdivision that's going to be created with only one way in and out. Do we want to do that? Do we want to say, oh, well, we missed our opportunity before, and so we're going to allow things to continue until we get caught up? Or do we want to say, no, we got to find these ways to provide circulation as we make these decisions? And if you're not prepared to answer all these questions, that's fine. We're just trying to get some feedback. I'm not asking for board policy today. I'm just asking feedback from individual members.
I am wondering about the format of this. You've put some things up on the wall here, and maybe it might make sense for a brief round of comments. Each of us has our own thoughts that we come in with. Maybe it would help to focus this discussion by hearing from the five of us and then asking specific questions and polling the board on issues that are not clear from our response to this list.
Okay.
Okay, why don't we just go through
If we could do each subject, though, at a time with you polling, or do you want to go through the whole list one at a time?
I think we should let each, Bill, my suggestion is let each board member say their piece.
Exactly, yeah.
And then let's come back
on
to
each topic,
specific
you mean?
questions.
On each topic, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, say your general deal and then just go down the list. I mean, if you want to start with me, I'd be happy to start.
Go ahead.
Okay, my concerns when we go forward with the general plan is I think we need to do a lot better job on infrastructure than what we're doing. And when I say infrastructure, I'm referring specifically to sewer, to public surface appropriated water, and to roads. Those are my three main infrastructure concerns. If we don't, we already had one study come in and say, correct me if I'm in error here, Steve, but the upper of McCollum is getting polluted because of septic systems. And when we had a population of 20,000 and you know, a scattering of septic systems, that's fine. But given a population of 50,000, you know, headed towards 100,000, then I think the question of septic systems is going to come more and more into play. And we need to have a policy that directs people more and more towards sewer systems. We look at public surface appropriated water. People come in and they want wells. Even a public water system they want based on wells. And yet I'll speak to the Highway 4 corridor. We're going to, we stand to lose substantial water rights on the Stanislaus River in the year 2015. And yet we have water districts, particularly the smaller water districts, I'm not necessarily referring to CCWD, that don't want to expand their boundaries, that don't, even if CCWD will give them the additional water, don't want to expand their boundaries, want people to go into the outlying areas of the community centers and drill wells. Well, wells should be the secondary source of water. It should not be the primary source of water, in my opinion. And to be losing water rights, or potentially losing water rights, because the water purveyors don't want to provide service when developers want them to provide service, to me makes no sense whatsoever. And so to force people onto wells when we're basically, I think both on the McCollum and I know on the Stanislaus in the year 2015, we're about to lose water rights. To me that doesn't make any sense. And the other thing when you come down to infrastructure is then basically it comes down to, well, how do we, particularly on sewer, how are we going to use the wastewater? We had this discussion on Trinitas, which I think is the wrong project at the wrong time in the wrong place. I mean, when you do something like that, we should have it we should have sewer systems down there, and we should be putting treated water on golf courses. We shouldn't be putting potable well water on golf courses. So all this is interrelated, but it's not going to work if we don't get the critical mass and the infrastructure that's needed. The second area I have down here is we need to do a lot better job of protecting our roads. And when I say protecting our roads, I'm referring to our state roads, our major collectors, and our minor collectors. We need to do something in the general plan that that limits the access points, because there's two ways of degrading a road and degrading a level of service. One's traffic count. The other is just slowing it down because we have too many driveways and we're not consolidating access points. And we had that discussion this afternoon, which is one of the reasons we're late starting this meeting, was basically talking about access points on Calaveritas Road. I think we need something spelled out very clearly in the general plan on the county major collectors and minor collectors, and on state roads, that we are going to do something that will make more sense of the access points, so we don't end up getting a degradation in the level of service, not because of traffic count, but because of access points. And we're at the point of doing that, particularly in the community plan areas where we have communities along state roads. We have way too many access points. And we're going to end up with gridlock, not because of traffic count, but because of access points. Thirdly, and I'll touch a lot of this has to do with your map on top. Thirdly, I think we need to look at the environmental aspects of the general plan, whether it be oak tree preservation or those types of issues, and we need to build in positive incentives and what we do now is negative incentives. If you show up with oak trees and remove any, then we're going to penalize you. Incentive, obviously, is the oak trees where you show up with development. We need to develop positive incentives. If you show up and you have a certain scattering of oak trees, certain sizes, we're going to have positive incentives to allow you to add something so that we have a positive incentive. Taking oak trees or the other environmental, there are a lot of whatever. You protect our habitat, you do different things, you get rewarded. Life and show up its development. So I think our incentives are absolutely backwards to what they should be if we're really serious about saving them. Make them liability because they're a liability to their assets. So I think we should take a real hard look at what we do. Then let me go back basically to the road. I was a big fan of I think a lot more roads. I think the county needs to take a lot more, have a lot more control and take a lot more ownership of circulation of the roads. And, in order to do that, they have to basically control it. So I don't think reading roads is homeowners association. Other mechanisms is good, but I think we're beyond the point of where we can say we can't maintain roads, therefore we're just not going to take it anymore into the system. We have to, as a county, with the level of growth we're having, we have to have control of circulation. We have to tie circulation together. To me, there's nothing more useless than a cul-de-sac, and that's totally surrounded by homes, and it is a last use of that property. Having a cul-de-sac at the edge of property makes no sense at all because roads through. Planning looks at a project. We always look at the project and say, well, this 20-acre parcel is the project, and that's the universe. Nobody will say we have to build the roads to county standards, do this to county standards, do that to county standards. Nobody ever looks and says, well, how are we going to accommodate the same infrastructure needs on the neighborhood property? If we don't look beyond the universe that we're just looking at, we have to know where we're going next. I mean, we take 3 steps, well, where the next 3 steps we have to take us. And basically, location, we have a prime example of that is Red Hart Drive in Murphy's, in my opinion, with the cul-de-sacs shooting out to the edge of the property. The next guy comes in and wants to develop, then there's no access points. And now we're going to have a huge public controversy just because we didn't allow any access points. And we allowed them to put cul-de-sacs where they absolutely did not belong. I think a lot more review of cul-de-sacs, because once you put a cul-de-sac, that's a dead-end road you're never going to change. And roads have to go through, they have to combine with other roads, they have to be extended. So unless that thing is totally surrounded by development, and you want it to be a dead-end road, then we should be very skeptical, in my opinion, of cul-de-sacs. So now I will turn and go over your list, transportation and circulation. You know, I covered roads a little bit. We know we need some bypasses at the state level, and we'll fight for those. And we'll get one bypass of a lifetime. My lifetime, that's one forward. But I think on the circulation component, we need to look beyond the project itself. We need to take a more regional look and say the project fits in. This is just one component of the region, and how is it going to fit just the region instead of just taking all the county ordinances and applying it strictly to that project like nothing else exists. So it needs to be looked. We need to have to look at it in relationship to a map that it's in the middle of the project. So, well, how does that affect, and how are we going to service the remaining areas? And we don't do that. And we've done a very poor job of doing that. And we paint ourselves into corners constantly when it comes to development because we never look beyond the project itself. On road maintenance, I think we need to do a better job on road maintenance. We're supposed to be looking at some funding sources. We basically, I think, are getting adequate road improvements and road maintenance out of new development. The problem is that we have a lot of roads that are currently in existence that aren't the responsibility of new development. And the question is, how are we going to maintain those? We don't have enough money to do so. The board takes money out of road maintenance for public transit, which everybody knows I'm not a particular fan of. Basically, it doesn't mean rail, it means buses. We took a bunch of money out from the DMV fees for the general fund this year because we were so short money. So we're going to need some form of a designated revenue source for road maintenance, but I don't think it's going to come, that part of it's not coming from new development. New development's already, as far as I'm aware, paying for its share. So then we come down to water. I think we need to have a lot more discussion on requiring development to be on public surface appropriated water, or we're going to lose our water rights. And it makes no sense to be drilling wells when we're losing water rights. You know, we can drill wells when we have no more water rights to obtain, not when we're in the process of losing water rights. On wastewater, my feeling's the same. The state's regulations on wastewater, on septic systems are going to become much more onerous. There's a lot of things we can do with the treated water. We can treat it to, I think it's Title 21 and use it for agricultural purposes. We can put it on golf courses. We do a lot of things with treated wastewater, and I think septics are going to become, if we just keep increasing the number of septics, then we will get to the cumulative point that we're going to have significant problems, and it's going to be very hard to address because you're going to be talking of taking 2 septic systems out isn't going to solve it. It's going to be thousands. And so we need to do a lot more on requiring public water, public sewer. On land use designations, I think we need to have a serious discussion of what we want for minimum parcel size. If we're going to basically expand and have more public water and more public sewer, et cetera, then we're going to have more density. You know, you can't take a 10 or a 20-acre parcel and create density and have public water and public sewer because you can't get enough lots created to bring county roads up to standard, to extend them, or to extend public water lines or public sewer lines if you're not going to have enough hookups if we have a bunch of 5, 10, and 20-acre parcels. So the parcels have to be big enough so that when it comes to development, and those parcels are developed, that there's enough money to extend public water, public sewer, and roads to new development. Pedestrian and bikeways, I'm a very strong advocate of that. I think we absolutely should be having those things, particularly in the community centers. Once you get out of community centers, then I think it becomes less imperative. If we want bikeways outside of the community centers, then we should have some designated bike routes. We're not going to make every road in the county a bikeway.
That's the slot right next door here. Yeah, we're going to take a minute here, take about a 2 or 3 minute break, folks. Anybody that's parked over here, sneak out the door and move your car.
How can I be?
You going to be there? Speaking of the microphone. Okay, folks, we're going to pick the pace up a little bit here, too. By the way, I don't know who had input into setting up here, but how you doing way over there, everybody? Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just we got hit up a couple times on the break. Economic development is a typo that wasn't on there, and it should have been. We have it handwritten in. I meant to add it at the end of the list. I should have said it earlier, so people weren't panicked about it not being on there.
All right, Supervisor Tryon.
Okay, let me, during the break, Rita said I have to speed up, so I'm going to talk faster.
Before you start, Supervisor Tryon, could we make sure we're all on the same page of where we want to go?
If I could interrupt my friend here, Tom, who I've decided is now the new environmentalist. Let me give a little perspective after sitting here a little bit. What you've had thus far in this process as described here is you've had a bottom-up discussion of what the community wanted through a series of meetings, letters, whatever it might be. This is like the other time. This is the top-down. Somewhere in the middle there, a document eventually gets submitted, which goes through a public hearing process and eventually gets placed into your lap to take the all-decisive vote at the end. One of the things having been in the seat that staff has been and trying to do a general plan, is one of the things that can hopefully come out of this is you have a long list of topics there. There's no way you're going to resolve everything, but if there can be some expression that allows staff to have an understanding of your meeting the mind on certain issues, that so simplifies the process of putting a plan together, so simplifies being able to put something down on paper. And so while there's certainly a value to having a long discussion about every item, in some ways, you focusing on what's important up there to you and expressing that and seeing if there's some commonality will go a long way to, in my view, better quality, but certainly a faster produced document that gives the staff some direction. You know, the alternative, if the staff doesn't get direction, they're left there to draw their own conclusions as to what to occur. And I don't care how human anybody is, there are going to be those who are going to come back and say, that's not what we said, that's not what I meant. So it's kind of like consensus building here on a few points. If even if 3 or 4 points only get a consensus, that's a huge step forward in this afternoon.
Okay, I will continue. Thank you, Brent. I was on pedestrian bikeways, and like I said, I think pedestrian bikeways very much belong in community centers. I don't think they belong outside of community centers unless we do a designated bikeway route, and I don't think that makes any sense unless we're going to put money into that designated route and make it bike safe, because I think when you leave the community centers, there's hardly a road in this county that's particularly compatible for bicycles and vehicles. Habitat easements, I'm not quite certain what you mean by that, but I will tell you this, I think it makes no sense at all to say, well, we're going to allow you to, developers to buy habitat easement, and you can, you know, and it's, I don't know what the standard is, say it's acre for acre and you buy 100 acres of habitat easement. I don't think it makes any sense at all to do that with a dartboard approach of just, well, we're going to have 100 acres here and 100 acres there and 100 acres there. What we're going to have to do then is come up with some kind of a general plan so it all ties together. Just having a dartboard approach to habitat easements to me makes no sense at all, and in the end can be very destructive, because you can put them right in the way of where development should go, or a sewer plant should go, or a water plant should go. Open space preservation, I'll leave that at this time because I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I mean, you can't just basically use a general plan to just force somebody into open space. So transfer of development rights, I kind of doubt I'm kind of uncomfortable on that without a clear definition of what the heck you're talking about. Because where you develop them from and where you develop them to makes a big difference. They're not all equal. I don't know what you mean by smart growth. Affordable housing, well, I tell you, when we finish with the general plan, and if everybody gets everything they want, including the environmental community, we won't need an affordable housing element for low-income people. We'll need an affordable housing element for high-income people. But historic preservation, I think that goes with the property owner. I don't think the government should come in and just impose something like that. I'm not for design review committees, et cetera. When I ran back in '84, that's one of my main platforms was to do away with the design review committee for Murphy's. And I delivered on that the first year I was elected, and it's never come back. And I think Murphy's has been much more prosperous without it than with it. All that is basically another miniature planning commission, and you go from there to the planning commission to the board to Superior Court. And I don't see any point in that. Maximum lot coverage, I guess I'm interested in more discussion on that. I'm not quite sure where I am there. On the last three, law enforcement, jail, fire safety, and child care. I don't think any of those belong in the general plan. Those are discretionary items that should be decided by the Board of Supervisors. To say that the jail's at capacity and therefore we're not going to issue another building permit makes no sense at all to me. Those are management decisions. They don't belong in the general plan under land use decisions. So I think those three should be pulled from the general plan consideration. So those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, I knew it was going to be a strange day when lunch was ordered, and I ordered the Philly cheesesteak with lots of beef, and Tryon ordered a spinach salad.
Once I eat more beef, I may change my position.
I was thinking maybe that's what's going on.
He ate my salad.
Well, in any event, I will try not to be redundant, although Tom already covered some of my concerns about infrastructure. I would like to add, however, a few comments on that. I believe that for a long time we've made roads the central feature of where we develop. You know, if you got the road, you just build a long, stringy thing along it, and that's how we do future land use. In my view, water is at least equally, and this is groundwater and surface water, is equally important to our planning. And luckily for us, we are sitting on the threshold of the ability to use a new assessment tool, which is proving to be within a 99th percentile accurate for predicting future impacts on water quality in our watersheds. This is called the warmth assessment tool, and it's developed by East Bay Municipal Utility District. So my first suggestion would be that we find a way to use that so that we know, instead of just fouling 1 million people's water downstream and building wells and septics too close together in certain geologic formations and certain slopes, that we use this tool as an integral part of our planning process. So water, as Tom suggested, I agree that both water and wastewater really need to be much better considered in this. Second element of infrastructure that I'm concerned about is housing. When the person making the median income, when the family making the median income can't touch even lower quintile housing, the median for that, we have a problem. And that is something that's affecting virtually every working family in this county. All of us who have kids and are thinking, where's the starter home, have to really wonder what's going on with our housing element. And in that way, and this is something that I'd like to suggest that we take a look at for every element that we have, but particularly housing at the moment, is where the heck are our implementation measures? We say we want to do this. It's all there in our current general plan. It's just that nothing ever gets done. And I think that has a lot to do with it's nice to make plans, but to actually have implementation measures that get us where we want to go is, I think, one of the key shortfalls of virtually every element. And Tom's discussion on roads, I think, is just part of that, but housing is very much on my mind. One thing missing entirely from our list, and something that I see as part of, and I guess it's now been added as an accidental typo, but economic development. If if we don't have an economic piece to our land use, if we're not considering the economics and well-being of the place we live, we're going to only force further, I guess, distortions and exploitations of things that don't belong there. We're spending all of our money in other counties. We have no economic plan. We don't even talk about it. And in my view, that's probably the key missing piece. How do you decide land use without also talking about economics? Is ag, for instance, we just went through a big, long zoning change on ag. But when you look at our general plan, will we put an ag element, or will that be part of our economic plan to preserve that aspect, that vital aspect of our community's well-being, not just for the economy, but also for the look of the place and the culture of the place? Another issue, and also while we talk about economics, tourism seems to be important to some areas of this county, and it seems to me that with it goes some element of historic preservation. Now, the town of Oak Hill has a community plan that considers that carefully. I think Murphy's and certain others. What do we want to look like, and does that have anything to do with whether we're attracting or repulsing the people that we're trying to have spend their money here? Is something that I think is worthy of a look. Another aspect that's important to me that we don't talk about, and it's not mentioned in our current general plan, is the overall, and I see one piece of it up here, there's child care. It sticks out like a sore thumb. What's that doing? And Tom says throw it out. What I would suggest is that we put a lot around it. I think there's a link between Health and Human Services and safety. Safety is an element of our it's a mandatory element that we need to consider. But what does a meth epidemic have to do with safety? Well, more than 2/3 of domestic violence, more than 2/3 of child abuse, more than 75% of the people in your jail, which we're all saying is too full, have a meth connection. And if we don't have some Health and Human Services aspect in recovery and prevention, if we're not teaching our kids and having some plan to deal with it, the whole state of Montana is doing that. Why don't we put something in that says, instead of having to build huge Rube Goldberg infrastructure designs around a health problem, why don't we take care of the problem? And why don't we make a plan to do that and include it in this? Now, child care is something that a lot of people don't think much about, but when you've got two working families and you're having to commute way the heck away for where you're going to work and shop, that causes a great degradation of the traditional or classic American family. And I don't think this is an area that wants to do that. If we have family values, we ought to be much more considerate of our kids and our families, and not put people through having to go out of county to get their child placed in child care and then go to yet another county to go to work. And we have more than a few parents that are dealing with that. So I think that's part of our infrastructure. It's part of our well-being. And it affects, oddly enough, the mandatory element, transportation. If you've got people zipping all over the place at great length, you're putting more hours on the road, you're putting more crowd on the road, and a well-structured infrastructure in Health and Human Services would go a long way to repairing at least part of that. Also, in infrastructure and circulation, safe routes to schools are very important in my view, and bike paths are an important piece of that. But our bike paths, the most recent one goes from the county campus to the library. As near as I can tell, it's not being traversed by a whole lot of kids to school or anywhere else, and it doesn't come from a place people live. So I'd like to see our bike paths actually make sense. Take people from where they live safely to where they go to school. That would be a good start, and we ought to make bike path plans around it. I guess I can't remember whether I mentioned the ag zoning. I think I did under economics, but we need a general plan that is consistent with the new things that went into the ag zoning, so that at least we have one consistency. Since we made so much progress on that, that would be nice. Finally, as regards open space, conservation, oaks, habitat, fish and game, and ag, I agree with Tom that it would be a good idea to begin to do, and housing as well. We need to start talking about incentives. We need to stop punishing people for doing the wrong thing. Actually, we shouldn't stop that. We should continue punishing people for doing the wrong thing. But we need to open a whole new area of incentives. We should provide every possible way for people to do the right thing. We should give them choices. And there are so many conservation easements and conservation measures that could be taken that would help ensure the open space mandatory element of our general plan, that it strikes me that instead of forcing the unwilling to do the unwanted, we should go way out of our way to have our implementation measures with concrete incentives, waivers of fees, tax incentives where possible, and other measures to get people to do things that are smart policy results for all of us. I, like Tom, have thought about every one of those things on the back there, but I won't. I'll take another opportunity later to comment on them. I'd like to finish with just reading 8 out of the 12 adopted land use principles for 6 of the 8 towns in my district. And I think they make sense, and I would hope that this would be central, or at least some of the thinking here would be central to the entire general plan process. 1 is that new development should be concentrated in existing town centers, community centers. 2, I've already said this, a range of housing types should be available for people of all income levels. Development should not outpace the ability of local governments to provide adequate services and infrastructure, reduce the level of services provided to, or place economic hardship on existing community residents. Infrastructure such as water lines, sewer lines, and roads should not be extended outside existing developed areas unless those areas are contiguous to existing communities and scheduled for development in the near future as part of community plans. Land uses should not put land use conversion pressure on ag lands or threaten continued operation of existing industrial and commercial businesses. Projects should be approved only if there's adequate water to supply them without risking water quality and current water supplies to existing users. I know that sounds strange to even mention, but it's surprising to me that we continue to sort of blunder into moments that actually violate that principle. Project design should work with the contour of the land, preserve physical features such as rock outcroppings, trees, watercourses, and wetlands, and protect important wildlife habitat. And finally, all projects should promote sustainable technologies, including support for energy and water-efficient practices using principles of conservation. I have made copies of this for the staff here, and I'm hoping that you will simply include that in the record. Thank you for your time.
First, I think the vision for the community plan comes from the community, not from the Board of Supervisors. But I will talk about those things that are important. I'm not concerned about hurrying up the process. I already knew the process would take longer than we thought it would. I did it again. So I'm going to say those things that I think are critical for the county at least to look at. We need to make sure that the general plan meets the legal requirements, that it's relative to state policies such as the infill, SMARA, airport. Those are some of the things, those are examples. I would like us to utilize the Awani principles for resource-efficient community. I think I heard Steve and Tom, and I will echo this, so there's 3 of us so far, on concentrating urban development in the urban areas so that, in essence, we go back to infill. Again, commitment, and I heard this, to agriculture, encourage Williamson Act, even though we had controversy about it today. Conservation easements. I want us to avoid fragmented land use. I strongly believe we have to decide where we're going to grow and where we're not going to grow and have the courage to make that decision. I want us to have a general plan that is sustainable And sustainability is something really that is determined by our policies and our indicators. For example, we must meet our current needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And that's how I would define sustainability. There's no endpoint in sustainability. It's a non-static system. I believe I also heard Steve say that the indicators or the policies, I believe he said, must be measurable. I think that's critical. We have to pick ones that are achievable, not may, encourage, might, would be nice. We must lead to real change. We have to pick achievable indicators. I throw one out, for example, building codes using pervious surfaces for parking and driveways. We must have action plans. I would very much like to see that in our general plan. It's going to take a lot of courage on the Board of Supervisors to make sure that the general plan is definitive in its nature. And I think we need to, again, look at the economy, the environment, and the social aspects of the community, some of things of which have already been mentioned. Again, I will say expediting should not be necessary. We have one opportunity to set the general plan vision for the county for the next probably 15 to 20 years. And I think we should take whatever time needs to be. Oh, I can't forget, I would like us to look at greenhouse gas emissions. I would like us to have join other communities to address issues such as climate change, transportation, and facilities. And facilities, what I will throw out is Calaveras right now is looking to join with Tuolumne County on doing a juvenile justice facility. So we're always talking it. I think if we put some of these in our general plan, we can make it happen. And I'm not sure if I've ever seen this, Larry, but if we did models to do some decision making in the general plan, so if your population growth is 1%, this is what would have to occur if it was 2 or 3, because your decision making will change based on what your population projections might be. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. Russ?
Okay. First of all, let me say that my name is Russ Thomas. I represent District 5. I know that there was some discussion I heard earlier about the person who started talking. First of all, I couldn't imagine that anybody would know Tom Tryon, but anyway, I live and work nearby Copperopolis and represent Valley Springs, or Rancho Calavera specifically. I appreciated Brent's comments about this bottom-up versus the top-down approach here. I started coming to these meetings several years ago when there was a fairly widely attended event over in the chambers that flowed out into the hallway, and they actually had to set up speakers in the hall. And the overall thing that was being communicated that day was that the citizens that were attending that meeting were trying to communicate to the Board of Supervisors. All of you have heard about the KISS principle, the KISS, keep it simple, stupid. What I heard that day was keep it rural, stupid. And I think that I can hold that up as my mandate, that I heard that, and I continue to hear the same opinions expressed. Now, does that mean that our economy isn't going to grow or it shouldn't grow? Absolutely not. In my mind, you don't have to go far from right here in the southward direction or the northward direction to see economies that are more robust than ours is. However, I see landscapes over there that I don't want to see duplicated here in Calaveras County. I think that we can more or less be in, I don't know, hopefully that we're in agreement about that, that none of us want to see unending rooftops without some undulating topography to break it up. We saw a pretty good example of that today, where there was some density that we tacitly approved pending coming back for a final analysis, but it was a very well thought out and arm wrestled solution to what was, as I understood it, it took place before I came on the board, the initial pass at this project going back to the 80s, where you had a more dense project originally proposed, and it came down to a project that was a third of the density that would be allowed in strict interpretation of our current general plan. It's 1/3 the density, yet the remaining houses, or the resulting houses, were quite dense and hopefully affordable, with large sections of open space interspersed, and what looked like to me was a very sensitive approach at looking at the oak trees that were there and leaving them. Now, I really don't want to get overly wordy. I don't want to create the impression that I think that this is going to be simple. However, there are certain things that, to me, will make it easy if we focus on them. And our economy needs to be intensified. We have the benefit in this area of having the wonderful resource of a rich historical heritage. Now, down in Copperopolis, if you come down there, you can see an example of a major developer that is doing a significant investment in a very intense commercial development, but he's doing it, or the entity is doing it in a way that it would look at the end of this development, or the end of the construction, is very believably like it was a town that developed over 150-year time sequence. You've got buildings that are juxtaposed against each other, but are intended to look very believably like they're from different time spans. Now, I think that that's a far preferable option when you compare to some of the things that I see on that side of the river and that side of the river, where you have just little leapfrog to strip mall developments that have no relationship to the fabric and the context that I would like to see. The heritage economy is a phrase that I hear repeated fairly frequently now. If we take advantage of this wonderful, rich heritage that we have, build our economy in ways that it relates to it, whether it's specifically tourism, file that phrase away and use it in your discussions with potential developers. We're very interested in the heritage economy and promoting that. I think that there are one of the very significant dilemmas that I see as we go down in the morning at the intersection of Highway 12 and 26. There's a huge gridlock that occurs down there that doesn't occur in the summertime when the school isn't there. I've heard mention the fact that is a high priority for fixing that intersection, and I'm sure that many people would be in a rush to go out and spend the $800,000 that I've heard that's been budgeted for that. But I think that we have to be careful. In my mind, we have to be careful about spending that money unwisely there whenever there are potential remedies that are on the horizon that would take that pressure on that particular intersection away by rerouting the road. I think we would be well advised to, and this is just my opinion, everybody up here has an opinion, right? But I would not really vote with favor on spending a lot of time, energy, and money on improving an intersection that on any given day in the summertime does not need significant improvement. If we could have something in the general plan that would provide for 15-year funding of a traffic cop, somebody with white gloves to get out there and direct traffic instead of an $800,000 signalization and widening that might conceivably tear down historically significant structures. Marita mentioned the Awani principles. I think that it goes without saying that communities that have subscribed to those principles have become superior communities, counties. I don't think that I would agree necessarily with Marita that some sense of urgency isn't required here. We have a national economy that is sort of in a state of stagnation to a certain extent because of some real estate issues. I would submit to you that unless we sort of move this process along, this county could be faced with a stagnation of its ability to respond to economic impetus if we don't get the general plan moved along in a fairly timely basis. It's unfortunate, in my view, that we have this thing called a moratorium right now. I think that it's misunderstood. We've tried to leave as much latitude in it as possible to allow certain changes to occur. But nonetheless, if you ask 10 people on the street, at least 7 of them, in my experience, will say, aha, you know, if you want to do any development in Calaveras County right now, you got to go someplace else because we've got a moratorium. Well, that the presence of that unfortunate situation needs to be addressed, I think. So in deference to Marita's suggestion about whether we have to go very slowly and get this done right, I think that we can move expeditiously and also do it right. That pretty much concludes my comments.
Thank you, Russ. Since everything's been said, I won't. No, never mind. I think with regard to the last comments by my colleagues to my left and your right with the timing of this thing, I really believe that the timing on this general plan will be self-imposing, to be quite honest with you, so I'm not going to worry about how quick or how slowly it proceeds at this point. I think we're going to proceed at the rate that we can, and it'll develop as it develops, and we'll see what comes out the other side. It seems, it's an observation of mine, it may not be of anyone else's, that there's a lot of talk about doing the community plan, the general plan in relationship to the community plans. They are completely separate issues in my mind, and we've pretty well stated that we do not want the development of community plans to in any way hold back or slow down or inhibit the development of the general plan, but it also seems to me that when I've been to the community plan meetings in several different communities, and the possibility here is that we are still, like we've done historically, in taking that individual look at the large picture. So what's important to me is that this general plan update takes more of a macro view of things rather than being so sensitive to this community wants this and this community wants that, which is all fine and well, but the general plan has to incorporate everybody's needs without discriminating. And I find that when I talk to my constituents, even in a couple of communities that I meet, they may see things differently because of what works in their communities. So my fear is that we might get distracted into segregating some land use planning because of the difference of opinion in various communities. So I'm just hoping that that has some glue there and we take a more macro approach to that. These communities are diverse, grossly diverse, so we tend to get away from, we want to get away from the individual suggestions by these communities and more of a universal plan. The project, that's the word I'm looking for. The project that we just heard today is a good example of where my feelings are with regard to land use. The general plan, more than anything else to me, is about land use, folks, and land use not for the next 5 or 10 years, but maybe the next 50 years. What I hear from most people, regardless of where they live, is that they really value the open space. That's what most people moved here for. That's what the people who are here, that have lived here a long time, stay for. And I want to reiterate what I did a little earlier today. In order to have open space, you're going to have to plan for more dense development of population. If there's an issue of economic development, that's fine, but I don't believe you're going to get anybody to intentionally move to a place where they want to create jobs and there are no people, be it no customers and no employees. Therefore, you have to have the rooftops and the businesses have a symbiotic relationship. There's no way around it. It's you know, a give and take situation, and if we can plan our developments to take place where the infrastructure is and build where there are good enough roads for circulation, where there are adequate sewer and water, and we can build rooftops for people that are rooftops or the homes are affordable, then perhaps we will have industries or businesses move here that would like to have customers and would like to have employees. The other part of that is, and back to the Awani principles, is that you can put homes on every 5, 10, or 20 acres and you'll never pay for your infrastructure, be it roads, schools, safety, police, fire, whatever. In order to have the infrastructure pay for itself, like it or not, you have to have some dense development. If you put, it doesn't have to necessarily, I think the R1 is like 6 units per acre. That's pretty crowded, and I'm not suggesting that that should be the mark there, but the more dense you do make the development, the more safety you'll have, the better roads you'll have, the lower the sewer and water rates, and the more attainable this will be. So I am an advocate of making these developments where there is infrastructure in the community centers, and not necessarily having what's been referred to as rural sprawl. Along with that open space comes the issue that we come to every time something comes to the planning department, planning commission, board of supervisors, and that is the environmental review, be it an EIR, be it a negative declaration, or what have you. And I am an advocate for a habitat conservation plan. The form that takes is up for discussion, but with a habitat conservation plan, you can set aside hundreds, if not thousands, of acres rather than a 10-acre parcel here and a 20-acre parcel there. You can create vast open spaces, and the thing that I like most about that is it's all voluntary. It all stays within Calaveras County, and I don't see a downside to that. With regard to traffic, of course, we've got the bypass going on the other side, on the south side of the county with Highway 4. That's going to really assist over there. The next thing is going to be on this side of the county. Supervisor Thomas alluded to the 1226 intersection. Yes, it is congested, and yes, there is some help needed there, and you can see that if you go to Angels Camp about this time of day and try to get through Angels Camp. Well, they're finally getting something done about that. Actually, I've been to Angels Camp this time of day, and it's much worse than going to the 1226 intersection. As far as a signal, fine. You know, a signal regulates traffic. It does not reduce it. Every vehicle going through there, every other vehicle is going to stop instead of every vehicle, let's put it that way. Put a traffic cop out there, I'm not sure that'll work. I've done that, and so that's not going to work. But the point is, folks, if we don't bypass these towns or these developments, we will always have that. And so I am an advocate of bypassing towns. People say, well, if you bypass the town, it'll affect the commerce. Right. It's sure ruined Murphy's, hasn't it? Highway 4 doesn't go through town, so nobody does business there. What are you going to do? I think the future that the major highways should not go through towns. They should connect them. If you want to get off the highway and go into town and do some business or go to work, that's fine. But I think we have to be careful not to route any more highways through the middle of town. As far as the infrastructure, somebody, I forget who, mentioned the word moratorium. I don't think you're going to have to worry about the moratorium, any moratoriums that the county of Calaveras imposes on anyone. When we run out of well water and we run out of places to put wastewater, you have a de facto moratorium. And we are not only approaching that, but we are there in some cases right now. For all intents and purposes, the groundwater in this county is used up. And I know that it's expensive to develop a surface water delivery, but the surface water is there. And I'll tell you, folks, if you get thirsty enough, you're going to have to buy the delivery process. So I think the general plan should address that in a very serious and hard manner. It is the future of this county. It's an old saying, I hear it more and more anymore, that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, and we're getting there real close. The general plan, I'm not sure this is the place to address it, but we sure need to address the issue of wastewater. There's more than one sanitary district in the county that is simply out of room to put the wastewater. Whether we develop ways to use that with irrigation, golf courses, intrusion into the waterways, that has to be addressed seriously right now, or we're done anyway. So in the interest of time, I'll end my comments there. Just to summarize, I think that we need to develop where the infrastructure exists. I think we need to concentrate on having our developments be dense rather than have what they call rural sprawl. I didn't talk much about circulation because that's been talked about enough. I do believe that roads should go somewhere rather than dead end. And what a concept, I know. So at this point, folks, that's, unless there's any further comments from the board, we all done? All in here? Brent, do you have a comment or two?
My one comment is somebody might want to explain what the Ahwahnee principles are. I suspect people, there are at least some.
Yeah.
And then I have a question to ask of staff after that.
Want me to take that?
Yeah.
The Ahwahnee principles talk about, was done at the Ahwahnee. That's how we came up with the Ahwahnee principles. It deals with resource efficient communities, and it really talks about conserving resources, minimizing waste, pedestrian, bicycle use. I added limited lighting because I've wanted a dark sky ordinance going on 5 years now. But that's okay.
That's
so
because you don't have
now-
any. That's because you don't have any burglars in a gated community.
There'd be ample supply of, open space, green space. You design communities around your transit areas. You focus activities around, for example, where you can have bus stops, and you have integrated communities where you have, shopping, working, living, schools, some of the things that were already addressed by the board. Efficient use of water. Again, I think they'll address that. Also, natural drainage, drought-tolerant landscaping. It's really sort of being good stewards and defining ideas on what being a good steward of the land is, and that all of us can participate in that. And so those are some of the examples that come in with on the Ahwahnee principles. I mean, there's a lot more. I just throw those out as examples. Walking communities.
One of the things, just to piggyback onto that, that is a concept that seems to work everywhere that I've ever been, which is, well, perhaps limited, but that we don't do here, and that is the concept of mixed use. In other words, when we zone for a business, or we zone for industry, or we zone for parking, or we zone for this or that. And when it comes to, if you plan it correctly anyway, the Ahwahnee principle goes to the old adage of, or the old practice of mixed use, where you have, perhaps you have some businesses, and above them you have apartments, and that way there's actually built-in security there in an area in the evenings, and there's still a neighborhood there. Not everybody needs or wants a single-family detached home. Maybe somebody wants to live in an apartment or a flat that is not part of a huge complex. And so part of the Ahwahnee principles, as Marita was saying, are zoning or use by actual need and use rather than building type and requiring certain uses of certain buildings. And so it's just getting back to the neighborhood concept. Okay.
I was going to indicate, just for anybody who wants to look it up, the Alani principles are put out by an entity called the Local Government Commission. Right. And there is a certain level of controversy with them, but that's for anybody who wants to refer to it on a web page. You can check that.
We'll go ahead and...
It's the Local Government Commission.
We'll put the link on our website, our General Plan Update website for everybody.
One question is, I believe it was Marita made a comment that seemed obvious to me, but was probably good to touch on, and that is that the document be legally adequate, because there's no use doing this if it doesn't end up being legally adequate. My question of the staff was, thinking the other day, we of course have the general plan guidelines that almost always need to be updated, and ultimately are guidelines and not the law. So we go to the government code, or we go to recent court cases. How are you going to deal with those edge ones, like the Attorney General suing counties over gas emissions? Are we global warming? Are we going to deal with that somehow, or what? And saying that, I have no idea how to deal with it.
Yes, we are, and I'll let Larry respond.
Can I just piggyback on Brent while you're going to be talking about Senate Bill 375, where it makes sort of transportation do demand models on sustainable communities. I mean, you're an expert on OPR, and now we have legislation, and I can't tell who's in charge. Thank you.
Relative to OPR guidelines and responding to Brent's...
Excuse me, Larry, for the audience, OPR.
I'm sorry. The Governor's Office of Planning Research publishes guidelines for the preparation of general plans, and they periodically update them. The current version was adopted in 2003, and the Office of Planning Research has been... They initiated an update, but frankly they've gotten sidetracked in updating the guidelines to deal with global warming issues and the governor's concerns about, and the Attorney General's concerns about how global warming is addressed in general plans and environmental impact reports. And we're following the case law, and I would just say at this point, it's a foregone conclusion that we'll have to deal with global warming in the general plan, and we'll have to deal with it in the general plan, the EIR. It's just inescapable, and to the extent that we decide not to deal with those issues, we're likely to get a call from the Attorney General's office. So.
Okay. Thanks. Great. Any other comments from the board at this time? Okay. We have a little bit of time, folks, and I certainly don't want to have all you here and give nobody an opportunity to address your board. So I'm going to invite you to do that about things that we have discussed here. I'd rather keep it to the issue at hand. And if you have comments to make, I would ask you to make them as brief as possible. But certainly, this is an opportunity for you to address your board. So come on right up. Just please, is there a sign in?
Yeah, there's a sign up over here. If you could queue up over here, sign in. Dave, you're first.
Good afternoon. I'm Dave Tanner from Valley Springs, and there was a few things I wanted to touch on myself. That one key item that I don't know why it's not up there, but it's very important to me, and that's recreation. I know it's been discussed. We've started committees, and we've worked on thought process how to create parks in our communities, but talking about it and doing something are two different things, and this is the time to do something about it. Every development project that we've got in the county that I've been working on, we've been voluntarily putting in a recreation aspect, a park, play fields, things for the kids in our communities that are presently missing. And I think it's a time that we actually start mandating parks and recreation within our general plan as part of the process. There are a lot of communities that we could use their models for creating that. So many square footage of development, so many square foot of green space. I think that would help improve some of the present conditions. Secondly, we talk about study sessions. I think it would be really neat if the supervisors could actually come up with a project that they think in their mind is a good project and go through the planning process and see for themselves what planners have to go through to get a project even to the Planning Commission. We talk about trying to preserve creeks. We already have to. We have requirements out there that make projects environmentally sound. There's CEQA process, there's NEPA process, there's all kinds of things that we have to go through to make sure that our project is even acceptable on a state and federal level before we even take it to the county level. So I think as a learning process, you guys might be amazed. I don't know if anybody here has gone through it, but what these people put us through, it's a lot of work. And sometimes it seems like we're pushing a rope uphill. There really isn't a lot of shortage of advice there. Another thing that we're looking at in the general plans we talk about, but economic, that's a great thing to talk about. How does it happen? I think one of the things we need to start doing is mandating economic as part of the development process. The city of Contra Costa County, Santa Clara County, city of San Jose have now adopted jobs for parcels, and which mandates that there is a commercial aspect or jobs that are created at the same time that there's residential, because we're not going to be able to turn to the state and the federal government for funding to help bail us out when we don't have tax dollars to cover the needs of our communities. If we start creating jobs here, we will keep money here. Back to the recreation, I'm sorry to bounce around here a little bit, but the recreation aspect is really important. I don't know how many people have kids that have grown up here, but how many people have seen kids go awry because they don't have something to do. We've seen some wonderful kids discover drugs and graffiti and whatnot, and get into trouble because there's just a lack of recreation. There's a lack of things for them to get involved with. Some of us don't like skateboard parks. Some of us don't like motocross tracks and things like that, but it gives the kids something to do. A lot of us had those things to play with when we were kids, and we seem to deprive our new kids of those same recreation and toys. I think density, I heard, there was a question on, well, we like to save the open space and yet we'd have density. I don't think there should be confusion there. I think, if we want affordable housing, we have to increase density. There's no way around it. Small lots make the houses more affordable. And I agree with we need to work with infill projects. Most of the projects that are being promoted out there now are mostly infill projects, but we need to make, just like you said, reward people for doing the right things and doing infill projects. And that could be done even economically with permit costs. If it's a project that's within the community and it's an infill project, lower their costs, make it a little more affordable for them too. And one other thing too that we can't forget, and we can't continue to penalize, the healthcare industry, which is not mentioned up there. I mean, child care is one thing, but we struggle at the medical group trying to get good doctors to come to our communities, and part of the reason is we don't have places for their wives to even shop. They come here and they look at our shopping and homes, and there's no place, there's no Nordstrom's here, so we have to look at that balance, but making it easier for the healthcare industry to provide services here. If we're going to do more expansion in other cities, for example, if Costco is now moving into Manteca, the government is giving them basically millions of dollars in incentives to come to Manteca. Rayleigh Centers just built 2 new centers along Highway 99. The 2 Rayleigh Centers were furnished to Rayleighs free of charge for 3 years, yet the rest of the center filled up. And that's looking down the road. That's creating jobs, that's creating tax base, that's what's going to make us healthy. But if we overlook the healthcare aspect of, we can't penalize the healthcare. We have to make it convenient for them and affordable for them to do their expansion needs within our county too. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. By the way, Dave, I agree with you about recreation, and it's an essential and recorded part of the open space element in this, so it will be addressed.
Put a check by my name on recreation as well, please.
Okay, and if I could do an aside right here, is that the Parks and Rec Commission has been very active and has been meeting on a regular basis, sometimes more than once a month, and it intends to come to the board very shortly with development standards for new development for Parks and Recs under the Quimby Act. So you will see there is already progress being made in this area.
My name is Joel Pitto. I live in Paloma. I come from a long line of mostly reputable Pittos from Paloma. My concern is that one of the most important things that should be on this chart is the reason that the county is here, and that's mining. Mining can be done cleanly. I don't endorse open pit mining nor mucking up the streams, but hard rock mining is something that has the potential for reviving the economic base of this county. As gold approaches $1,000 an ounce, you will see more and more people starting to look at who owns the land under their house and exactly where the lines are. And it's guaranteed to be addressed as a priority in our county in the original county charter. Now, through some malfeasance along the way, it got left out of a lot of the paperwork where it should be in big, tall letters. I'd like to see that you value the heritage of our county and that this gets put back into its priority, and it can be done without despoiling the environment and pissing off the neighbors too severely. So please protect our mining rights.
If I could address that, mining isn't on the list, not because it's not an important issue, but that I didn't feel there was a lack of consensus from this board on mining. It's an active part of the community, and it's been supported. It provides jobs, so it was something that we intend to keep very important and necessary in our general plan update. So I don't want you to think it's because it's not on there, it wasn't an issue.
And all other mineral resources?
Yes.
Sand and gravel?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Steve Elias, and I'm a D2 resident here today on behalf of Sierra Club. When I first read about this meeting in the newspaper, and I heard that it was all about expediting the process and focusing, so the board would have a focus going into the meetings in the community. You know, there was lots of alarm bells going off in my head because I remembered what happened in '96. I happened to be around at that time, and as some of the folks on the board can attest to, it was a plan that, well, now it's being called unlawful, but it was totally inadequate. And I think that's one of the main reasons is we didn't include the public at the level that we should. I think maybe, I'm getting a feeling maybe there's a little division between the planning department and maybe the board and some members on the board about that whole issue of expediting the process. So I think that needs to be resolved. I mean, to my mind, what you guys are going to be doing with the general plan is probably the most important thing that you will do during your time as members of the board by far. I mean, it's the biggest thing happening. And to talk about expediting it so we just get through with it and make something happen, I think that's definitely going down the wrong path. Also that, I know Marita also alluded to this, and I think Marita was right on. The visioning process shouldn't be limited. These comments from the board shouldn't be taken and we shouldn't just have this focus going to community meetings. It should be an open process. You know, maybe a lot of folks on the board don't care about child care, but maybe there's a lot of people in the community, probably not in Marita's community, but say in Valley Springs, for whom child care is extremely important. And maybe it should be part of our general plan. That's something I haven't really thought about that much. But I would hate to see the process get narrowed down for the purpose of expediting it. You know, I think about making things happen sooner. If you're really, really interested in doing that, there are ways to maybe expedite it that make sense. And I'm thinking about the fact that we have our whole planning department now, and a lot of their, not the whole planning department, I know there's folks working on the general plan, but so much energy goes into processing existing plans that have these large general plan amendments. You know, we just went through Tuscany Hills. There's going to be Saddleback, which doesn't even have an EIR. That's going to be controversial. There was McCulmy Oaks that had a general plan amendment, and, you know, that's on the table. How much of our energy through the planning department is going towards going through processing these projects that you guys don't really have to do at this point in time? I know I was told at a public meeting, no, we need to process these projects that have general plan amendments. We're obligated to do it, but that is not true because we're in a general plan revision process. The county can say to these developers, look, you know, this is priority. This is where we want to focus our energy. If a developer takes you to court over it, they lose because you're in the middle of revising the general plan. So if you want to talk about expediting, you know, the Sierra Club plans to address this issue in a more formal manner with the board in November. But please think about it, you know, because to me it doesn't make sense to be foreclosing our planning options by moving ahead and processing these plans that some of them don't have EIRs, and we don't have to do them at this critical juncture in time. The third thing that I would like to talk about is that issue of economics. I like Supervisor Valley Springs Supervisor Russ Francis' comments about, look, why don't we look a little to the north and to the south, see what's going on. You know, whenever I go over to Jackson, I'm looking at that big shopping area where you have very high density and lots of commercial that's generating income for the county. I don't know how many people in this county think that would be a good idea to duplicate it over here, but it could be part, you know, that kind of thing. I think we need the economic element in our general plan. That's the kind of thing that could be addressed in the economic element. The other kind of thing I'm thinking about in terms of the economic element is, to me, it ties into land use very directly because, I mean, let's say you created a general plan that was an environmentalist, the Sierra Club fantasy land, right, where all of your land use designations were just what we dream about. I mean, it was really designated towards preserving open space, okay? We all know that no matter how good it is, there's a general plan amendment process that can happen 4 times a year. If the political will and the social will is there to change those land use designations, they're going to be changed. But if you tie it to the economic element and you point out in your economic element the value of open space, the value of preserving historical areas, the value of preserving ag lands, if there's a direct link there, then it makes it so much easier to preserve the rural values, to preserve the open space, to preserve the habitat areas, to preserve all the things that Supervisor Francis is talking about. And I hope you give that economic element serious consideration. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Marion Coran. I'm representing myself. And I'm so thrilled to hear that a lot of you said exactly what I have written on my piece of paper. My agenda for today is water. And a lot of this you have said already. These are suggestions. Mandate water conservation in all public and private landscape. Develop guidelines for implementation using professional and lay volunteers knowledgeable in landscaping and plants. I guess I'm getting a little detailed on that one. Require only gray water for use for irrigating all landscaping in new construction, both public and private. Develop guidelines for requiring structural and plumbing design to implement using skilled landscape and plumbing experts. This is not easy to do, but it's doable. Cluster new housing and require centralized sewer and water systems. This would avoid individual wells and septic systems. Require proof of adequate water resources for any new housing or commercial development before approving plans. Mandate all public water service agencies to coordinate and collaborate to ensure adequate water services for all citizens of the county. I sort of hear that sometimes they're not even talking to each other. And explore collaborating on a regional level with other counties on water access, storage, and planning. This would include organizing smaller entities into a larger group to represent small rural counties on water issues with the state and the federal governments, which sit on legalizing what we do, and they also sit on money. Basically, that's my 2 cents worth on water. And before I developed this attitude, I sit on a private well and a private, highly expensive, engineered septic system. And I think it's really antiquated. I'm scared I'm going to run out of water, and I wish I was on a public water system. And I'd like to share this with the Planning Commission.
Good afternoon. I'm Kerry Williams. I'm with the Calaveras Child Care Planning Council. I want to address the question of why child care should be to be included in the general plan. Including child care language in the county's general plan can be a powerful tool for encouraging the development of child care within the county, and in order to support local residents and businesses. It can also initiate other positive land use reforms, such as effective zoning practices and streamlining use permit processes. Constructing Connections, which is a project of the Calaveras Child Care Council, has recognized that in the county there is a critical shortage of child care spaces. It is recognized that 72% of adults in Calaveras County work 35 hours or more, that 57% of women in the labor force have children under the age of 6. Calaveras County's percentage of women in the workforce is third highest in the state. Calaveras is one of the counties with the greatest percentage of child care requests from parents looking for work. Currently in Calaveras, children under 5 represent about 4.4% of the total residential populations. These are census 2000 census numbers. That could be higher today. And I say that because in Calaveras, only 5% of all spaces in licensed care are available for infants. Coupled with the population, with the projected population growth over the next decade, will only further burden the short supply of licensed child care in the county. Child care is a vital service to the families of Calaveras, as it allows parents to work and provides a healthy environment for children to develop and prepare for school. When parents are confident that their children are in safe and secure learning environments, productivity increases and absenteeism decreases. When businesses thrive, so does the county. An economic impact report, which we'll complete in January, we're in the process of finishing that right now, will show that the child care industry is an important part of the county's local economy, with gross receipts of $6.23 million and an employment base of over 169 total jobs. Growth in the child care industry has been slow and difficult. Child care business, which generally operate with little or no profit margins, are struggling to staff their programs and maintain facilities to meet the increasing demand for care. The child care industry in Calaveras does not have resources nor the expertise to ensure that families have available quality care that is needed for a community to thrive. Throughout California, a radical shift in public consciousness around child care is taking place. Cities are no longer viewing child care as a public or recreational service. Instead, that child care is being viewed as a social infrastructure, like transportation, public works, affordable housing, and higher education. All these elements are necessary and valuable pieces of a community's economic and social well-being. According to a national study, each dollar spent on quality child care can save $7 in future spending on criminal justice, welfare, and social services. Thank you. And could I leave this with you?
I have one question. You said the women, something in the county were the third highest with kids under 5 or kids in child.
Cal has the highest percentage of women in the workforce, third highest in the state.
Of women in the workforce?
Yes.
Women with children or
Women
just
with
women?
children. Women and then women with children. Yes.
We're the third
Women.
highest in the state
Yes.
of women with children in the workforce. Not women, but just women with children.
Just women. I'm sorry, just women is the third highest.
Oh, women working.
Women
without kid. Okay, got it. Thank you.
As a percentage of our population, is that what the measuring device
You're
is?
going to ask me that question? The
Well-
percentage to what population?
Well, as a percentage of our overall population that we
I
have.
don't think I can answer that one right now.
Well, we certainly wouldn't have the third behind L.A. County as women in the workforce, and we've only got 38,000 people.
Percentage of population. Yes. Thank you, Karen.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Wright. I'm the Executive Director of the Foothill Conservancy. I'd like to say I was really encouraged by what I heard from you all today, mentioning the Anawani principles. Mixed use and infill is, I think, a really positive direction the board is heading. A few things I'd like to see make it into the general plan, and some of you guys mentioned this, was the implementation measures. I think we need strong implementation measures, especially on the open space and conservation elements. This will ensure that keeping Calaveras rural, as Russ pointed out, can happen through the general plan and strong implementation measures. I also like to say that I think that it's really key we have clearly defined boundaries around our existing communities. So we say this is where the growth is going to be, this is where we're going to protect it and keep working landscapes working, keep our ag lands working. In the circle that we want to develop in, we want to use the infill, the mixed use, make walkable communities. I think that's, at the end of the day, if we could have those clearly defined in the general plan, we'd have a really good general plan. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Addie Jacobson from Murphy's, and like Chris, I want to tell you I was very encouraged by what I heard today, and I applaud you all on your consideration for the county and your thoughtfulness around how it's going to develop. So very encouraging. I've got a few things to say, somewhat disjointed, and I guess those of you who know me know I'll have to respond to the first speaker and talk about doctors' wives who want to shop at Nordstrom's. I don't think this is something that is, I don't think we need to plan our community around this, and I think there is indeed a dearth of primary care physicians in this county and other counties, but this is part of a nationwide situation due to economics that more and more medical students choose to go into more lucrative fields, and we're not the only ones in this situation. And I would also remind the speaker that in most medical schools now, more than 50% of the class is female, and we may be looking at providing for the husbands of the physicians who come. So that said, I want to also say that besides implementation measures, it was mentioned earlier that we need to think about funding for things, and I think that's really true. And somebody mentioned along the way, and I think we never forget this, that we need to think about prevention funding, because it is good to have a jail and all that sort of thing, but the old adage about an ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure is probably about the right ratio of 1 to 16. Every dollar that we spend in prevention is going to be worth way more than the intervention money, and the social costs when we have to intervene are more than what we spend. So, you know, I'd like to see the general plan really address prevention and social well-being and try to work from those points of view. And I do take exception with Supervisor Tryon, who thought that fire safety should be thrown out. I think on a day when the southern half of the state is an inferno, we need to just be grateful it's not us and think that we do need to deal with this. And I think just this last weekend, I spent a lot of time thinking about fire-safe building techniques, and a lot of them are out there. I think that's something we might want to address as we look at our safety element, is how could we maybe, again, have incentives for people building things rather than out of flammable materials. There's ways that we can help protect ourselves, because fire is inevitable up here. Another aspect, most of you who know me know that I'm very concerned about our forested lands, and that hasn't been mentioned too much here today. And I do understand they're under TPZ zoning, those that are most actively managed. But there's some carryovers into fire safety and into global climate change. The two things we know about climate change the most are that fires are going to become more frequent and more intense, and that the water is going to run off of our land faster in the spring. The two things we know probably most clearly about plantation logging techniques is it causes faster runoff of water in the spring, and plantations from the ages of 10 to 40 are a huge crown fire potential. These are health and safety issues that we need to address no matter what the zoning of our land, and I think it's something that we need to bring forward and talk about as part of our safety and our global climate change. So I just want to put that on your radar too. And again, thank you for having this session.
My name is Tom Infacino, and I'm facilitator for the Calaveras Planning Coalition. I thank the board for meeting today to kick off Phase 3 of the General Plan Update process entitled Issues, Opportunities, and Vision. I have to say that I'm very encouraged by what I've heard today. I have heard a commitment to water, wastewater, and road infrastructure. I've heard support for incentives for environmental protection. I've heard support for a system of preserving blocks of open space, habitat, and working landscapes, in conjunction with support for dense, clustered, mixed-use development. And I've heard support for the Iwani principles. First, I would briefly like to remind the board of the input that people have already provided to the county and its general plan consultants regarding issues, opportunities, and visions. At your April board workshop, each board member was presented with a list of issues that the coalition hoped would be considered in elements of the updated general plan. That list is attached as Exhibit 1 of what I presented to you. Some of the issues not discussed today, but included in that list, are air quality, energy conservation, noise, and flooding. And I hope that the general plan update will consider those issues as well. At the community workshops last May and June, people from around the county raised a broad spectrum of issues and presented different visions for the future of their communities and for the future of the county at large. We look forward to seeing your staff's comprehensive summary of that input in the near future, not just the top 3 concerns and top 3 assets. Then in June, the coalition provided 2 binders of input to the county for its consideration in preparing the background report. The coalition provided background materials on important county issues and opportunities. A summary list of those issues is attached as Exhibit 2 to what I presented to you. Again, we look forward to the release of the draft background report next month, which will provide citizens and the board with valuable information on critical planning issues. That report's even longer list of issues from your December 2006 work program is attached as Exhibit 3. I don't think it can be emphasized enough today that it is essential that the background report be made available to the public so that they can be informed as they participate in the visioning process. I am encouraged that the board will be holding another visioning workshop after the background report is complete and after the coming round of community workshops is complete, so that the board can give even more informed and more refined direction to your general plan team. The second topic I want to address relates to the process followed as the general plan team launches phase 3 of the general plan update. I am encouraged that the general plan team will provide us dates and agendas for the upcoming workshops as soon as possible so that we can get the word out to people and we can get people to those meetings. I hope that the general plan team will listen carefully to citizen input to find areas of agreement that are suitable for inclusion in the general plan project description. I hope the team will also listen carefully for areas of disagreement that can find voices in general plan alternatives. This is not the time to eliminate issues of public concern, not a time to ignore difference of opinion, and not a time to falsely homogenize areas of disagreement. This is a time for listening to input and organizing input in preparation for the next phase of the process, phase 4, alternatives. It is these alternatives that will be analyzed for their fiscal and environmental impacts, and it's those alternatives and those analyses that will inform the board's ultimate choices about the content of the general plan. By way of example, I'd like to contrast the El Dorado County's 1996 general plan process to its 2004 general plan process. In the process that led to their 1996 plan, the county eliminated critical issues, refused to consider a spectrum of alternatives, and refused to adopt mitigation measures. Many of the participants felt betrayed by that abuse of the process, and the court rejected the plan as not in compliance with CEQA. By contrast, in preparing their 2004 general plan, the county considered critical issues, evaluated a number of alternatives, and in deciding on the final plan, the board picked what it felt was the best parts of 2 very different alternatives and merged them into the final general plan. That plan was approved by the court as both consistent with planning law and consistent with CEQA. In Mariposa County, more recently, they ultimately followed a similar process, leading to their adoption of a general plan last year that was not subsequently challenged. In short, I encourage this county to follow a process that begins open-minded, becomes fully informed, and then concludes with the board making the critical policy choices. In closing, I would like to tell you a brief and relevant story about what happened to me at church last Sunday. The congregation got to that part of the service during which we pray silently for divine assistance with those personal matters that weigh heaviest upon our hearts. Usually I take this time to ask God to relieve the suffering of my many friends and relatives who are stricken with debilitating and painful diseases. But last Sunday, when I bowed my head and examined my heart, I began to pray for Calaveras County. I prayed that God would bless people with the patience to endure the lengthy general plan update process. I prayed that God would give people the grace to be tolerant of those with different views. I prayed that God would bless us with the ability to be both hard on the issues and soft on the people. And I prayed that during those dark times, when we seem surrounded by negatives, God will deliver us. And I prayed simply that people would listen. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless the good people of Calaveras County.
Good afternoon. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. I, too, appreciate the board having this workshop, and I realize it's been a long day, so I'll make my comments as brief as I can. I, too, am concerned about fire safety. because of the events going on in Southern California. And I just want to draw to the board's attention that it's had, the board has a fire or water enhancement fund that sets a fee for those who don't provide for water tanks. They can pay $900 into a fund, and that takes care of not having to have a water tank to fight fire. That's been in effect for about 15 years, as I recall, somewhere in that neighborhood. 91, 92 it came into effect. It has not been raised. You may want to look at that because I don't think you can provide the same kind of fire protection today for that kind of money. I did want to comment with respect to Supervisor Tryon's comments as he was going through the items up there with respect to circulation planning. I agree wholeheartedly that you got to look outside of the plan development when you're approving it, so you do have some sort of semblance of circulation. I also agree that access is certainly a contributing factor. For example, along Highway 26, as you go through Rancho Calaveras, you'll see a driveway, you know, practically every 150 feet, it seems like, and those are going to cause problems if they're not already causing problems. So you need to think about that. Of course, the board is the one who is going to have the ability, if there is a deviance from that or a waiver, if there is restricted access, the adjacent property owner is going to come to the Board of Supervisors for help. And if you want to hold with that policy, then you're going to have to stand fast. I wanted to mention, speaking of highways, scenic element. That is, when you come into Calaveras County, no matter what highway or major route you come in on, you ought to have some sort of semblance of something that's pleasing to the eye. And certainly billboards and commercial development without landscaping of some kind in front of it does not provide that. You may want to think about, and I hate to suggest this, mass zoning with respect to plan unit development along highways and major routes, so that you can tell the developer, we'd like to see some sort of a landscape plan. I want to say that the landscaping, if at all possible, should be irrigated with recycled water or non-potable water of some kind, gray water. It's already been suggested. Bill Claudino mentioned, Supervisor Claudino, pardon me, mentioned that he liked mixed uses. I like the idea too, and back east you see, you know, all kinds of that, where you have retail office space underneath and living and residential space up above. I think that's a fantastic idea. To suggest, however, you go multi-story in a foothill county is probably heresy and probably would run you out of town, but I think it's a good idea. Also, the habitat easements that are up there, you mentioned that you're a big fan of habitat enhancements, and one way to start that is to require dedications along creeks. When a development comes in, you say, okay, well, dedicate non-development areas along creeks, because that's typically some sort of riparian habitat for wildlife. Supervisor Walensky cautioned the board that it's all well and good to have a general plan, but without implementation measures, you know, it's just another piece of paper with policies written on it. And I think that's a very good suggestion, that if in fact you do revise the general plan, that you concurrently have those implementation measures that you also adopt. And lastly, and certainly not leastly, Supervisor Callaway, you suggested that the general plan be legally defensible. Absolutely agree with that 100%, and not just because it meets all the requirements of law, but because when you, if and when you are sued, it's the public who pays the fees for the attorneys to go and defend the county. And I just as soon not have my money spent in that fashion. I think a legally defensible document is something that you ought to strive for, and I'm glad you brought that up. Also, Supervisor Thomas mentioned the 1226 work going on, or not going on, but has been proposed in Valley Springs, one which is signalizing the intersection, and another is the bypass. And I have a copy of the project study report for the bypass that was done about 4 or 5 years ago by Caltrans. It's the preferred alternative was estimated at that time, I don't know what it is today, at about $60 million. I don't think Calaveras County is going to see $60 million for the next 60 years probably. So it's probably not something that's going to happen, in the near future. In the meantime, some improvements need to be done to take care of that congestion that's there at 26 and 12 presently. Thank you.
I think I'm technically off the clock, so I might get to speak as much as a parent and a mother and a community member as director of First Five. I'm Karen Pekarsik. I am the director of First Five, and I'm also a parent of kids in Valley Springs who essentially are from here. They've lived here long enough that our joke in the house is, we don't just live here anymore, you're from here. And one of the things that they ask me all the time is why certain things are happening, why certain decisions are made. And they're hearing the news. They're watching the news about the fires in Southern California. I have 3 brothers and sisters who each live between fires. When I talked to them last night, I could hear from them that they assumed that somebody's paying attention, and despite the freak things with the winds and possible issues with arson, that somebody paid attention and somebody's planned how to get things taken care of, despite the news and things burning down around them. When I last talked to them, they believed they were safe. When I look at the development that's planned in the community and in the county, I think that this general plan discussion, whether it's about infrastructure that's technically a part of the plan or not, those infrastructure items definitely need to be a part of the conversation. When I talk to my kids, we talk about doing what's right versus doing the right thing. You can do technically what's right based on what the law says the minimal required elements are, and you can do what's right by the community. Mr. Williams mentioned that almost 20%, 18.5% of our kids in the county are under age 14. This plan will be a plan for the next 15 to 20 years. I was encouraged when I heard Supervisor Callaway say that this is going to take some courage on the part of the board and the community to develop a plan that's meaningful and defensible, but does the right thing, does right by the county, and by the kids that are going to inherit the work that you do. We had a meeting several months ago, and we had a representative. It was a health conversation with doctors and with health professionals in the area. Congressman Lundgren sent a representative to the meeting, and as we were visioning out health responses to issues in the county, one of the things that he told us was, that's really nice. Having a vision is really nice, but you need to know that nobody's going to do anything on a political level that isn't politically expedient and that only affects them for the next 2 years. My heart nearly broke because I realized this is going to be really hard. If we're trying to vision out the needs of our community and our kids and our county over the next 15 to 20 years, but we have decision makers who do not have the courage to make decisions beyond a 2-year politically expedient window, we're not going to get anywhere. I appreciate your conversations and your concerns about the technical required aspects of the general plan, but I really do encourage you to be courageous, to be creative. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take more time and money. You can use the expertise of those of us in the county who are willing and able to help you be expeditious in developing children's elements, child care, infrastructure, fire safety, law enforcement, all those elements of the general plan that might not technically be required, but will definitely improve all of our quality of life and the quality of life that our children are going to inherit from your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Do you have any closing remarks, Stephanie? Or?
If I could take a few minutes to respond to a couple of things.
Sure.
Just to reiterate that economic development, recreation, mining are all part of the general plan update and are assumed to be important things that we all agree on. So just because things aren't on a list doesn't mean they're not going to be addressed in the general plan. This is just issues that we wanted to get some sort of consensus on. I wanted to reiterate that we are going to, everyone's mentioning the Awani principles. We will get those linked on our website. Fire safety is a huge issue for this county, and it's one that we have not addressed. I was hoping to have some discussion on that by the board, but we'll try to come up with some things for you to think about, perhaps, and take them to the community, and we'll come back with that. Some of the things are, for example, design standards on where we locate our homes, if we continue to build on hilltops or off of inadequate access roads, those kinds of things that we can address and develop in standards. But they are essential not only to the county, but to the emergency personnel that work in the county and fighting fires. I wanted to address this issue of legal adequacy, and it never would have occurred to me that anyone would think that we're spending this kind of money and not intending to provide a legally defensible document. So I just want to say that's just an assumption that's always been there. So I just want to assure you we're not trying to rush through the process. We are providing a legally defensible document. So. The background report, the baseline study has administrative draft is in my office and will be back to the contractor within this week. They will have 2 to 3 weeks to make the final edits on it and work out any differences in opinion. Then it will be released to the public for review. We will get the dates for the visioning, the November and December dates as soon as possible. We'll post them on our website. I also wanted to let you know that there is a November 8th Habitat Conservation Plan educational forum that is going to be held in Valley Springs from 7 to 9. We're going to have a panel of speakers talk about HCPs, why they think they're important or shouldn't be used, and then allow about an hour for community question and answer period. We don't have a final location yet, but that'll also be on our website. We're trying to get the school, but we haven't heard back yet. And I think that was all that I had on here relative to those issues. I don't know how you want me to address those issues we didn't cover today. I guess we can just go back to the community and come up with some ideas, and maybe when we come back to the board have a better discussion during the alternative section.
Well, I think we'll have discussions that continue. It's been mentioned more than once that this process sometimes gets a little bit messy and may not be as well organized as people would like it to be, but that's the way you get everybody's input. It's not exactly a fine mathematical problem here. So I appreciate all you folks coming here. We'll be back here several times, I'm sure. Just remember not to park next door, please. Get the traffic cops out there. Any further comments from the board or from Brent?
I was just going to say one thing a little bit in defense of staff. A number of people today seem to mention the word expedite and react to it negatively. And I think from my perspective, and Stephanie and I touched bases at one point here, you know, this planning process has been going on for a while, and I can guarantee you it'll go on for a lot more. And as one of the few people in this room who's actually been through this, one of the toughest things to do is to sit behind a closed door in an office and try to figure out what it is you actually put down in paper. And so I think the use of the word expedite, which I understand was used in the paper last week, which I'm behind on my reading, and I think I used it at the beginning, somehow has drawn a negative connotation. What I meant by that, I think what the staff meant by that is anything at any time that you can do to provide information or direction, always knowing that until you make that final vote, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you always have an ability to revise that. Expedite just means you move the process along. The planning process, no matter how you get into it, and they've described it a little differently, but basically it has 5 components. You gather data, you analyze the data, you consider alternatives, you make decisions, and then you implement. And this process is still very much at the early part. So I don't want anybody to draw a conclusion or take shots at the staff because of that use of the word expedite. It's just making the process move along towards what will hopefully be a quality decision way down the line.
If I could put it slightly differently, people out there who are worried about this county achieving warp speed shouldn't be.
Boy, is that well stated.
Okay, are we done? Thank you all very much.